very good evening, dear students. Welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy daily Hindu news analysis. So today is 9th May 2025 and today we have some very important topics for the discussion. So one by one we'll try to discuss all these important articles in a very detailed manner, and all these articles that we are going to discuss are very important for your examination. So we'll try to discuss them in a much more detailed and in-depth manner, and the first topic that we are going to start this discussion is with a very important topic, that is India and Pakistan issue. And in fact we all knew that right from independence. So both these countries are once colonized by the British, and after they become independent, in fact both these countries have been facing a lot of issues. And not just India and Pakistan, India is also having issues with other countries in the subcontinent, particularly with Nepal, Bangladesh, and to some extent Sri Lanka as well. So therefore we'll understand what are some major issues in the Indian subcontinent and how these issues are actually shaping the regional dynamics over a period of time. So since India is actually having aspirations to become a major power in the region and beyond the region, and how these existing issues in the Indian subcontinent are primarily actually working as a roadblocks for India's growth. So we all knew that Pakistan has been continuously sponsoring cross-border terrorism. And in fact, India has been continuously suffering from the cross-border terrorism. So despite evidence, Pakistan failed to take a substantial action on the terror networks which are located in Pakistan. And in fact, in April 22nd this year, Pahalgam terror attack led to the killing of 26 individuals. So followed by that, the government of India has undertaken, particularly the security forces have undertaken Operation Sindoor to strike the terror networks which are located deep inside Pakistan. So therefore, in this context, we'll understand the major challenges between the relations of India and Pakistan, and how these issues could be resolved, how these issues could be addressed in the longer term. So we'll understand everything. So the context is that now we all knew that India has conducted a series of strikes deep inside Pakistan, and India named this particular operation as Operation Sindoor. And yesterday also we have understood some important operations that the Indian security forces have conducted, particularly aiming Pakistan. And in fact, Operation Sindoor was conducted by the Indian armed forces or the security forces primarily because of the terror attack that took place in Pahalgam April 22nd. And in fact, as part of Operation Sindoor, Indian security forces have targeted terror camps not only in Pakistan occupied Kashmir but also deep inside Pakistan. So therefore, overall, this has been indicating that India's ability to strike targets deep inside Pakistan through carrying out such operations. However, this actually marks a sharp escalation in the relations between India and Pakistan. And in fact, this is an escalation in India's counter-terror response, right? So if you look at India's counter-terror response, particularly after 2014, India was responding to such terror attacks because Pakistan is not taking any substantial action against these terror networks. And because of that particular reason, India has been undertaking such operations against terror networks which are located in Pakistan. So we have already seen that surgical strikes were conducted, Balakot airstrikes were conducted, and now Operation Sindoor was also conducted by the Indian security forces. So therefore, you could see an escalation in India's counter-terror response. And in fact, this counter-terror response has actually triggered a fears of a prolonged India-Pakistan conflict with wider implications for South Asia's regional peace as well as the long economic stability or durable economic stability. And ultimately, both India and Pakistan are the nuclear powers. So if both India and Pakistan continue to fight each other, so it would actually disturb the entire regional stability, right? So in this context, we'll understand the strategic context and the regional security dimensions which are involved in this. right? So however, if you closely observe India's actions, so India's actions actually mark a shift or a signal, a decisive shift from a reactive approach. So earlier India's approach was just a reactive approach, but you could see that India's approach is now becoming more and more proactive to counterterrorism that has been emanating from Pakistan. And in fact, the Indian security forces through Operation Sindoor primarily targeted camps in both Pakistan occupied Kashmir and deep within Pakistan as well. So therefore, it has been ultimately marking the operationalization of a new cross-border engagement threshold. And apart from that, there are certain mutual destruction and limitations of war. Now, in this context, why it is mentioned that a mutual destruction? Because both India and Pakistan are countries which have the nuclear arsenal. And in case the war escalates into a nuclear war, that would promises mutual destruction for both India and Pakistan. So because of that reason, it is said that there are certain limitations to the conventional war between both India and Pakistan. And in this case, a full-scale war is unlikely. So it cannot be sustained for a longer periods of time, because it would come with a grave economic and human costs for both India and Pakistan also. So therefore, a prolonged escalation between India and Pakistan would make it strategically irrational for both sides, right? So however, India, despite a bigger country in terms of its GDP, in terms of its economic strength, in terms of its military strength, but in case of a prolonged, a sustained conflict between both India and Pakistan, so that would make huge costs on, these two countries would suffer huge costs in the long term. And in fact, it would also brings in instability, right? So instability is also another major issue, because South Asia would suffer from a chronic shortage of visionary political leadership. So since several years, because most of the countries in South Asia, once they were colonized and they were independent countries from the colonial powers, right? So right from their independence, South Asia lacked the visionary political leadership, so that can take all the countries in South Asia on board. So when it comes to transcending the historical animosities that they have in terms of religion, so in terms of ethnicity, in terms of language, right? So therefore, there is a lack of a visionary political leadership to foster a stable regional development framework and also transcend the historical animosities that are existing among the people of different countries. And that's why South Asia is also facing to some extent instability as well. And even the conflicts between these countries within South Asia is also affecting South Asia's developmental in the long term, right? So this is called as developmental dilemma that the countries in South Asia have been facing, because South Asia no doubt is a region with a huge population. So despite South Asia is having a huge population, it has been suffering with a number of problems, right? So for example, higher levels of poverty, higher levels of unemployment rates, and lack of food or hunger, lack of water resources, communal violence, terrorism, right? So number of problems that these countries have been facing, and this is also affecting the development within the South Asia as well. However, so if India thinks to decouple its economic rise, now India is the fastest growing major economy in the world, so we all knew about that, right? So it is a fastest growing major economy, and India is located in the subcontinent. India is located in South Asia. But if India thinks that it would decouple its economic growth from the neighborhood disputes, the author has been telling us that this is not possible. So India cannot decouple its economic rise, its economic growth with the neighborhood disputes. So why? Because if instability continues to exist in the South Asia or in India's neighborhood, India may not be able to grow at a faster pace. So this is what the author has been telling us, right? So decoupling the economic rise from the neighborhood disputes has worked so far for India. But a prolonged conflict between India and Bangladesh, between India and China, or India and Pakistan, so that would actually risk derailing the growth and also increasing the vulnerabilities, right? Overall, it would increase the vulnerabilities and it would ultimately derail India's long-term growth objectives. However, we need to understand Pakistan's destabilization strategy as well, right? So Pakistan's destabilization strategy, in the sense that if Indian authorities have been looking to destabilize Pakistan through number of ways, the instability in Pakistan is also not good for India. So this is what the author has been telling us, right? So in case if there is an instability in Pakistan, so that will not help India in the long term, right? Because a weakened Pakistan may actually see economic sabotage through a prolonged hostility, because instability would result in the non-state actors largely controlling every aspect of society, economy, and all other sectors. So therefore, there's a probability that it will further fuel the cross-border terrorism, and it will further leads to the prolonged hostility. Since Pakistan is also a country which is having the nuclear arsenal, it will not do a greater good for India, right? So therefore, it will ultimately or potentially dragging India into a war of attrition that could further hampers the development. And if you look at the previous wars, right? But in the previous wars, the major powers like US, Russia, China, so they used to take sides with countries. But if you look at the current geopolitical alignments, so they may not exert timely diplomatic pressure. For example, if you look at US, so recently US Vice President J.D. Vance clearly said that it is none of our business, right? So therefore, they failed to exert timely pressure on either India or Pakistan, and it will further leads to de-escalation of the existing hostilities and further increasing the risk of prolonged conflict between both India and Pakistan. And you could also see the India and Pakistan relations over a period of time, right from India's independence till Article 370 has been revoked. India and Pakistan have fought multiple wars, right? So both these countries fought wars in 1947, 1965, 1971. So number of times they have fought wars. So kindly go through this timeline, and it is also very, very important for your exam as well. And next, so the peace framework has been abandoned. So there is no sustained peace framework that is existing between India and Pakistan that could ensure a long-term peace between these two neighbors, right? So in fact, the last serious peace initiative was taken up during the prime ministership of Manmohan Singh, right? So this is known as Manmohan Musharraf formula of 2000 to 2007. So it sought to recognize LOC and also the joint mechanisms to resolve issues bilaterally, right? So after that, there was no serious effort made by either side to instill or ensure peace at the borders or improve relations with each other. And from then onwards, the relations started skyrocketing, right? So relations started nosedive. And in fact, despite the aggressive rhetoric, major powers like US, Russia, China, so they effectively endorse the line of control between India and Pakistan. So this is the line of control between India and Pakistan. So they very often adopt a narrative that they say that, or they accept that the line of control is actually a de facto international border between India and Pakistan. But either India or Pakistan are not ready to accept this as an international border, because India says that the Pakistani occupied Kashmir is an internal part of India, right? And India very often asks Pakistan to vacate the Pakistani occupied Kashmir, which is illegally occupied by the Pakistan. So this is the stand of the major powers. and which is different from the stand of both India and Pakistan. So in this case, it is very difficult to settle this issue peacefully. And in fact, we all knew that India adopted a policy called neighborhood first policy, right? So the objective of neighborhood first policy to engage with all the neighbors of India in a much more proactive manner and improve India's relations bilaterally. So however, the author has been telling us that India's neighborhood first policy becoming more and more assertive and aggressive, and that has been making India's neighbors turning away from India or turning against India. So that we have been observing with the case of Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, and to some extent Sri Lanka also, because all these countries have started inviting China. So China is a strategic concern, a strategic threat for us in the long term. So therefore, there is a need for peace and stability in South Asia or in subcontinent. And peace and stability will ensure that India will continue to grow at a faster pace, and India will also achieve the objectives that it has already set in, that India wanted to become a developed nation by the year 2047. Right? So in order to achieve all these objectives, we need peace and stability in South Asian region. So for that, there is a need to settle the disputes, settle the issues between India and Bangladesh, India and Pakistan, India and Nepal. So however, we have arrangements like SAARC, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. But the problem is that SAARC as an organization largely remains ineffective. So in order to overcome SAARC, BIMSTEC as an organization has been formed. So however, this is the time that a SAARC has to be revived, and this is also the time that the issues which are existing among all these countries have to be identified, and those issues should also be solved bilaterally through these multilateral forums, right? So ultimately, achieving peace and stability in South Asia is very, very important for India's long-term growth aspirations, right? So the next important topic is air defense systems. So in the context of Operation Sindoor, so when we strike the terrorist camps in Pakistan and also line of control, so Pakistan has started retaliating, firing a lot of missiles and drones to Indian cities, particularly Indian border cities right from Jammu up to Rajasthan. So however, we have a strong and a robust missile defense system, and that is able to protect the Indian civilians and also Indian infrastructure and particularly Indian cities. So therefore, we can actually say that Indian air defense system is largely successful, but on the other hand, Pakistan's air defense system is failed to detect the Indian strikes. So therefore, it is important for us to understand India's air defense system and how India's air defense system would actually work. Now, it is being said that India thwarted Pakistani attacks, and these Pakistani attacks, they mainly aimed at targeting multiple Pakistani air defense systems, reportedly neutralizing one in Lahore, right? So it is being said that when India attacked Pakistan terror networks, Pakistan also fired missiles, and it also planned to attack India with these missiles and drones. So however, India thwarted Pakistani missiles with a strong air defense system that we have already put in place. And similarly, India, as a retaliatory strike, targeted multiple Pakistani air defense systems, and it has also neutralized an air defense system which is located in Lahore. However, air defense systems are crucial. They are very, very important for any country. For India, they're very important, right? So because we are located in a region where India is mostly surrounded by the adversaries. Now, in this context, we need to have a strong air defense system that could actually thwart missiles of enemies. So air defense systems are crucial in modern warfare because they protect against enemy airstrikes. and they also disable them and exposes a nation to aerial attacks, right? So in fact, a defense system would ultimately protect a nation from air strikes or missile strikes of an enemy country. And you could even clearly see that there is an inability or failure of Pakistan's air defense system. So that makes India's missile strikes precise, accurate, and most successful. Now here, how air defense system operates. We'll understand how air defense system actually operates in a very detailed manner, and what are different air defense systems that India has. So the main goal of an air defense system is to eliminate the aerial threats. For example, whether it is missiles, whether it is fighter jets or drones, right? So everything would be considered as an aerial threat, and the main objective of the air defense system is to eliminate the aerial threats such as fighter aircrafts, drones, and missiles. Now, so in this context, what are the key operations that an air defense system would perform? Now, air defense system would perform three main operations. So one is detection of such enemy missiles, fighter jets, drones, and then tracking them and ultimately intercepting them. So when we talk about detection of the enemy missiles, so in fact, the air defense systems actually equipped with radars. And sometimes the air defense systems would also equip with satellites as well. So therefore, these radars or satellites that are linked with the air defense system would identify the incoming threats. So how they identify the incoming threats? By emitting the electromagnetic waves. So they would emit the electromagnetic waves to identify the incoming threats. And in fact, these electromagnetic waves bounce off objects like aircraft and return to the receivers, right? So ultimately, the electromagnetic waves would be received by the receivers and ultimately helping determine the distance, the speed, and the type of a strike. For example, whether it could be a missile, a drone, or a fighter jet, and their speed and the distance, right? So ultimately, for detection, radars will help. So within radars, electromagnetic waves will help identify those objects. Secondly, tracking is also very important. So once you identify, you need to continuously track these missiles. So after detection, threats are continuously tracked. Again, we use radar to continuously track the threats, and other sensors also, for example, infrared cameras and laser range finders. So we use all these different objects to continuously track the objects. And therefore, this process will help us manage multiple threats in real time and also avoid the friendly fire. And once we are continuously tracking these objects, ultimately we would intercept. So this interception is based on threat's nature. For example, what type of a threat it is, what is its range, what is its ultimate speed and distance. Now, air defense systems would launch appropriate countermeasures to ultimately neutralize those objects, right? A detailed description has been given here, right? So how India's missile defense system will actually work. Now imagine that an enemy missile has been launched. So first, an enemy missile has been launched. So this enemy missile would be detected or continuously tracked. For example, Indian Air Force airborne warning and control systems would alert the control center, right? So they would alert the control systems that a missile has been launched. And after that, a long range tracking radar, and this long range tracking radar is Israeli Green Pine radar. And this long range tracking radar will trace the velocity and direction of the missile. And after that, a missile that has been fired, it comes closer, a second radar, and the second radar is French made multifunction fire control radar, locks this particular missile. And after locking it, the interceptor missile will be launched from the vehicle. And ultimately, this missile that has been launched will intercept the enemy missile, and this enemy missile will be destroyed. Right? So this is how the air defense systems are actually work at a multiple levels. Now we'll understand the different methods of interception of air defense systems in India. So there are different methods of interception of air defense systems. So the first method is fighter aircraft. When we talk about this fighter aircraft method, so they actually engage and neutralize the enemy aircraft, especially bombers, before they can actually strike. And in fact, the fighter aircraft as an interception air defense system would be equipped with cannons, rockets, visual and beyond visual range missiles, and electronic warfare systems. For example, the examples of the fighter aircraft as an interception of air defense system is MiG-21 Bison, MiG-29 Sukhoi MKI, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited Tejas, and Rafale. Right? So we would take this fighter jet to intercept the enemy missiles, and that is what is called as the fighter aircraft based air defense system. And second one is surface to air missiles. However, the surface to air missiles are considered as most reliable and most successful, and they are also most often used in the modern warfare. Right? So the primary weapon in most of the modern air defense systems. Right? In fact, S-400 missile defense system is also an example of surface to air missile system, which is also called as SAM. Right? So in fact, it is most reliable, most successful, and most safer, and even it is also most versatile than the aircraft. And because of that reason, in most of the modern warfare, surface to air missiles are extensively used. And in fact, there are different types of the surface to air missiles, but this is an unofficial classification. So firstly, heavy long range surface to air missiles. So these heavy long range surface to air missiles would have a fixed or a semi-mobile. So semi-mobile means they can move from one place to another place. Right? So they are either fixed or semi-mobile missile defense system or air defense system. For example, S-400. So S-400, it can hit the targets hundreds of kilometers away, and we have procured S-400 from Russia, and it is one of the most advanced air defense systems in the world. And in fact, S-400 played an instrumental role when it comes to intercepting the Pakistani missiles after Operation Sindoor. Secondly, medium range surface to air missiles. So medium range surface to air missiles are mobile and also the quick launching missiles. For example, Akash, Bharak. So these are the missiles which could be considered as a medium range missiles, and they could be mobile missiles. I mean, they could be taken from one place to another place. And short range missiles such as man pads. So that means man portable missile defense systems, and they are most effective against drones, helicopters, and even the low flying jets as well. Right? So these are two different types of air defense system or methods of air defense system. Third is anti-aircraft artillery. So anti-aircraft artillery was once a dominant form of a missile defense air defense system in the warfare, but now it becomes secondary, but it's still considered as most valuable defense against the low altitude threats, and it can be fired over 1,000 rounds per minute, and because of that reason it is still considered as most valuable, and its shells explode at a present altitudes, creating a shrapnel fields as well. And the fourth method is electronic warfare method. So this electronic warfare method could neutralize threats without physical destruction by manipulating the electromagnetic spectrum, right? So it will not physically destroy the enemy missiles, the enemy fighter jets, but what the electronic warfare would do, so without physical destruction, they just manipulate the electromagnetic spectrum of those enemy missiles. So what are the methods that the electronic warfare would actually use? So it uses jamming enemy radars or targeting the systems and disrupting the guidance of missiles and drones, right? So it ultimately confuses and misguides the incoming threats and overall reducing their effectiveness to hit the targets. And that's how the electronic warfare actually works here. And as I have already told you that India procured S-400 missile defense system from Russia, and it is the most advanced missile defense systems in the world, and it is a surface to air missile defense system. And in fact, S-400, its minimum range would be 40 kilometers and its maximum range would be around 400 kilometers. Right? So in fact, so this is how S-400 missile defense system would look like, and this is what is called as a canister, and this can shoot down up to 80 targets simultaneously, and that is the advantage of the S-400 missile defense system, right? So however, the disadvantage with the S-400 missile defense system is that it cannot yet accurately target the low flying aircraft and missiles at an altitude below 3000 feet at a great distances, and that is a disadvantage. But India secured the S-400 missile defense system, and you could see that India's air defense system is a mix of both indigenous as well as the foreign missile shields. For example, we have indigenously developed Akash air defense system, and apart from that, S-400 missile defense system that has been secured or procured from Russia, and third, Spider missile air defense system, and fourth, Barak 8, and fifth, ballistic missile defense. Right, so these are different indigenous as well as foreign missile defense systems, air defense system that we have already secured. Right, so kindly go through the details of all these different missiles. So Barak is a joint DRDO and Israeli aerospace industries project, and Barak 8's range is 70 kilometers. Right, so in fact, Indian Air Force to get initial 9 medium range surface to air squadrons of 10,076 crore. Right, so this is a Barak 8 surface to air missile, and Spider, it is an Israeli low level quick reaction missile system, and its range is 15 kilometers. Right, so in fact, Akash is an indigenously developed air defense system. Right, so its range is 25 kilometers, and we all knew that 39,000 crore deal with Russia, and we have procured S-400 missile defense system, and its overall range is 400 kilometers. And in fact, ballistic missile defense system, so it is an indigenous project to shield or to develop two-tier ballistic missile defense system shield. Right, so these are a combination of Desi and Videshi missile shields. And next important topic is declining maternal mortality rates in India. Right, maternal mortality rate. So declining maternal mortality rate in India actually indicates that there is a substantial progress when it comes to ensuring access to healthcare and institutional deliveries to women, and also health education and awareness creation among women in rural areas, and that helped substantially reducing the maternal mortality rate in India. So we'll understand what exactly is a maternal mortality rate and how much maternal mortality has been reduced, and why it is very, very important. So the maternal mortality rate in India has been declined to 93. So as per 2018 and 2020 data, so the maternal mortality rate was 97, but it has been came down to 93. Right. So what is maternal mortality rate? So maternal mortality rate is the mortality of mothers for 1 lakh live births. Right. So 1 lakh live births, how many mothers are died, is what is known as the maternal mortality rate. And 2018-20 the maternal mortality rate was 97, but it came down to 93 in 2019 and 21. So therefore this is very, very important here. And in fact, so this data has been provided by the Office of the Registrar General and Census Commissioner of India. And secondly, it is being said that India has made a notable progress in improving the maternal health, and as it is reflected in the latest maternal mortality rate statistics. And in fact, so declining maternal mortality rate indicates that health access improves, and apart from that, the government policies and schemes have been yielding sustainable results as well. So therefore the sustained reduction in maternal mortality rates actually highlights a combined efforts of government policies, healthcare infrastructure improvements, and even increased awareness of the maternal health services as well. Right. So ultimately, so all these have been giving us good results in terms of declining maternal mortality rate. So we'll understand about maternal mortality rate. So what exactly is a maternal mortality rate? And you could also see the trends of declining maternal mortality rate. So we can say that there is a consistent decline in the maternal mortality rate, like, you know, from 2014 to 2018-20. So the maternal mortality rate is a critical indicator for the reproductive health of women in a country. And apart from that, when we talk about the maternal mortality rate, what is the definition of the maternal mortality rate? So it is defined as the number of maternal deaths per 1 lakh live births during a specific period of time. So this is the definition of the maternal mortality rate. Now also understand and remember other thing, that UPSC has asked about the infant sex ratio, I think. So in UPSC has asked about the sex ratio, right? So therefore the maternal mortality rate is also very, very important. So please kindly go through this. So that was asked in, I think, 2024 prelims examination. So because of that reason, the definition of the maternal mortality rate is also very important for you, right? So a number of maternal deaths that could occur for 1 lakh live births during a specific period of time. It could be either 1 year, 2 years, or 6 months, right? So that is what is called as maternal mortality rate. In fact, maternal death is classified by the World Health Organization. And in fact, according to the World Health Organization, it is a death of a woman during pregnancy within 42 days of termination of pregnancy from any cause related to or aggravated by pregnancy or its management. And this is the definition of the World Health Organization in terms of a maternal death. And in fact, declining maternal mortality rate is also a good indicator of improvement in the Sustainable Development Goals that have been announced by the United Nations. And in fact, Sustainable Development Goals also aimed to reduce the maternal mortality rate to less than 70 for 1 lakh live births by 2030. Now we are in 2025 and the maternal mortality rate came down to 93, and by 2030 we could expect that this number can be brought down below 70 as well. Thereby we could achieve some of the Sustainable Development Goals as well. Right. So India's declining maternal mortality rate is a positive step towards achieving the target of declining the maternal mortality rate below 70 for 1 lakh live births. Now, what are the major causes of maternal death or maternal mortality rates in India? So in fact, there are a number of different causes for maternal mortality. According to the World Health Organization, so more than 700 women die every day due to the preventable causes that may be related to pregnancy or even childbirth as well. However, according to WHO in 2023 alone, maternal deaths occurred almost like once in every 2 minutes. So you can imagine how serious this problem is and why it is very, very important to reduce the number of maternal deaths. However, there are certain factors which are considered as most prominent and key factors which are contributing for the maternal deaths in India. So one is complications during the pregnancy and childbirth. So that could lead to the maternal deaths and unsafe abortions and lack of access to the institutional deliveries, right? So we need to increase access to institutional deliveries, and that is very important. And lack of timely medical intervention, inadequate access to skilled healthcare professionals. And in fact, if you look at India, so India is having problems in all these different areas, whether with respect to complications during pregnancy, after childbirth, a lack of timely medical intervention, inadequate access to skilled healthcare professionals, and even low and lower middle income countries, including different parts of India, they are accounting for about 90% of the maternal deaths globally. So you can imagine the seriousness of the problem. However, these states, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, UP, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Assam, so these are the states which have the highest number of maternal deaths. So therefore, it is very, very important that the government should focus on these states as a priority states to must reduce the overall maternal mortality rates in India. Now, when you are asked a question in mains examination about the maternal mortality rate, so if you can draw this if you can draw this map in the examination, and if you can show the level of maternal mortality rates in different states, so that would help you score good marks in your answer, right? So there are number of schemes that the government has launched with respect to improving maternal mortality rate under National Health Mission. So what are the schemes that the government has launched for this effect, right? So the primary objective, the primary aim of the National Health Mission, one of the main objective is improving the maternal health, reducing the maternal mortality rates, and also reducing the infant mortality rate in India, thereby achieving the sustainable development goals, right? So in this context, goal number 3 of sustainable development goal talks about healthcare. Now, National Health Mission is considered as a central, a key aspect of India's maternal health through a comprehensive RMNCAH+N strategy, right? So this is essentially reproductive, maternal, newborn, child, adolescent health plus nutrition strategy, right? So this strategy that has been adopted as part of National Health Mission to reduce the infant mortality rate as well as the maternal mortality rate, and substantially improving access to healthcare and also access to nutrition. So there are a number of programs that the government has already launched for reducing the maternal mortality rate. So one is a Janani Suraksha Yojana. So this Janani Suraksha Yojana was launched by the government in the year 2005, and it actually provides cash incentives to promote institutional delivery among the below poverty line individuals, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe women, so ultimately reducing the maternal mortality and the neonatal mortality. And secondly, a Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana. Again, it offers a cash incentive of 5,000 rupees for the first live birth, with an additional income incentive under Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana 2.4 for a second girl child, to promote the positive behavior among the people, to bring in attitudinal changes among the people. So third is Janani Sisu Suraksha Karyakram. So it actually ensures free delivery, including C-section, diagnosis, medicines, transport, diet. So all these different facilities in the public health institutions for people. And apart from that, another important scheme is Suman, that is Surakshit Matritva Ashwasan. So it was launched in the year 2019 and it guarantees free, respectful and quality maternal and newborn healthcare with zero service denial. And Pradhan Mantri Surakshit Matritva Abhiyan, and it provides a fixed day free antenatal care on the 9th of every month. So thereby it focuses on high risk pregnancies, and over 5.9 crore women examined till March 2025. So these are important schemes that have been launched to reduce the maternal mortality rate and infant mortality rate and also improve nutrition. And apart from that, the education, communication, information dissemination is very, very important. So for that, the ANM, Anganwadi workers and Asha workers, they have been playing a very, very important role at the grassroots level in reducing the maternal mortality rate and infant mortality rates. Right, so these schemes have to be continued, but the focus should be on the areas where there is a high prevalence of the maternal mortality rate and infant mortality rate to achieve the objective of sustainable development goal of reducing maternal mortality rate less than 70 by the year 2030. So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. So if you have any doubts regarding this lecture, you can ask those doubts in the comment section. Thank you so much.